Welcome back to the Anansi. This is another episode of book recommendations where I don't give a review or anything. I just give a book that I enjoyed recently that I think you will enjoy as well. The book I'm going to be recommending this week is The Sympathizer by Viet Nguyen. This was the Pulitzer Prize winning book in fiction for 2016. Viet Nguyen is a refugee from Vietnam. He came to the United States when he was 4 years old during the time of the Vietnam War. Nguyen is an associate professor of race and English at the University of Southern California, and he did 11 years of intense research on Vietnam. And this book, this novel, actually coincided with a nonfiction book that was called Nothing Ever Dies, Vietnam in the Memory of War.
Well, I wanted to write a novel that would be a spy novel and a historical novel that would be entertaining for readers, but would also touch on all these kinds of political issues that have been really important to the Vietnamese people in Vietnam and overseas because of the war. And a sympathizer who was caught between sides, between communism and anti-communism, America and Vietnam, was the perfect subject for that.
The book is written through the first-person account, kind of like a confession of a South Vietnamese captain who's born a bastard. He has a Vietnamese mother, but he has a French father because Vietnam at the time was colonized by the French army. So the narrator, who's a captain in the Southern Vietnamese army, is actually a sympathizer to the communist overthrow of Vietnam. So the opening scenes of the book take you into Vietnam as Saigon falls, and then we follow the narrator back into the United States, and his role is really to give intel back to the northern Vietnamese regime back in Vietnam of the southern movements in the United States. The Vietnam War is absurd in many ways, and very rarely do we hear the perspective from the Vietnamese side versus the United States side. In the United States, we have this Apocalypse Now type viewpoint of the Vietnam War, and Apocalypse Now is this famous movie that was made in the 70s post-Vietnam War. I love books that challenge the American viewpoint, because in the Vietnam War, only 58,000 American troops died, but 3 million Vietnamese people died. And then in neighboring countries like Laos, over 2 million died in that war. So to see everything from the American perspective as an American, to grow up with our education system, we really saw a one-sided viewpoint of what went on. What's really fascinating about this story is his ability to use duality and this theme of two different sides to every story. So, I mean, the narrator is a spy, someone who's undercover for the North Vietnamese, and he's also portraying the different lifestyles in America, the Vietnamese in America versus the Vietnam he knows back home. And he's also talking about just how the public sees Vietnam from the American perspective and the Vietnamese perspective. And it's really enlightening, and I want to read the first opening lines of the book because they just set up this scene. It's brilliant writing, and I think it's worthwhile to show. I am a spy, a sleeper, a spook, a man of two faces. Perhaps not surprisingly, I am also a man of two minds. I am not some misunderstood mutant from a comic book or a horror movie, although some have treated me as such. I am simply able to see any issue from both sides. And this is what Nguyen keeps up for the majority of this story, and it's really a fantastic literary accomplishment. It's part historical fiction, part satire, and part thriller. And I think that's why it won the Pulitzer Prize, because it's very, very well done. As you can see from watching my channel, I love political books. I love books with a strong message, and this is one of them. And don't get me wrong, this book has a lot of violence in it and some scenes that are very hard to read, and I want to warn you beforehand. But I also think it's important to read these kind of books. But the author also